From the nation's capital, this is the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast with your host, Rob Snowhite.
Thanks for downloading the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. This episode features Chef Tom Colicchio of Craft, Hospitality, and Top Chef TV show. We're going to learn about Chef Tom's early life and climbing the ranks in the culinary world. Then it's my chance to pull back the curtains to one of my favorite TV shows and get some of my long-standing questions answered. Then we'll discuss Tom's love of fly fishing. This episode is brought to you by Traeger Grills, the most efficient way to cook animal. I made spicy Korean wings last night, 2 hours at 230 and then 10 minutes at 400. It's probably the best wings I've ever had. Let's hear more about Traeger Grills from Chef Chad Wells. We haven't heard from Chad since the Snakehead tournament, so let's check in with him.
Hi, this is Chef Chad Wells, Executive Chef of Walker's Tap and Table. What do I love most about my Traeger Pro 575? It's not only the most consistent and versatile grill on the market, but now it's easier than ever to grill on the go. With the Traeger Wi-Fi app, I can be cooking and then decide I want to go fishing. I can go hit the water and I can see everything that's going on my grill, from the temperature of my meat to the temperature of the grill. I can make changes all while I'm on the water from the palm of my hand with the Traeger Wi-Fi app. Dinner's ready. I simply pack the boat up, head home, and enjoy a wood-fired meal with friends and family. To see some of my wood-fired creations, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Chef Chad Wells. That's at Chef Chad Wells. And now the moment you've been waiting for, Rob's interview with Chef Tom Colicchio.
All right, so we have with us Tom Colicchio, chef, owner of several restaurants, top chef, judge, and fly fisherman. So, Tom, let's learn about, where did you grow up? I know from the show you're a Jersey guy.
Yeah, I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is kind of I think the third largest city in New Jersey. And my dad was a correction officer in a county jail. My mom stayed at home until we were teenagers, and then she started working. She ran a school lunch program in a cafeteria in a public school.
Is that your first introduction to food?
No. My parents both cooked at home. My mother was a good cook. She had her probably 20 dishes that she would rotate through. My dad would, if he went out to dinner and saw something, he'd come home and try to experiment. So if he saw like a stuffed artichoke, he'd come home and try to recreate it. Food was always important growing up. I had to be at the dinner table 5:30 every night. And holidays were usually revolved around food. Every Sunday we called gravy, but it was most people know is tomato sauce. So it was sausage and meatballs and brajol and all cooked in a tomato sauce, usually with some sort of, we didn't call it pasta then, we called it macaroni, and usually a salad of sorts. And there was always the immediate family and extended family as well that would come over. And this was every Sunday.
How much of that was Italian-American influence versus also just living in Jersey?
Italian-American. My parents were both Italian, both born here. My grandparents on my father's side came here, and he was a young boy in 1903. I think he was 2 or 3 years old. My grandparents on my mother's side were both born here. And my grandfather on my mother's side, he had a small boat, and we would go crabbing and fishing and clamming in the Barnegat Bay in New Jersey. And I had 2 jobs. One was to keep him awake on the way home, because he would nod off, and I had to sort of elbow him. And the second job, when I was about 5 or 6, I was taught how to clean fish. And so my job was to gut, scale, fillet fish from a very young age. I had a knife in my hand, and I'm not quite sure why they thought it was okay to put a knife in the hand of a 6-year-old, but it kind of worked out. Those meals were crabs, and the way we cooked crabs, and I didn't realize it, this I thought this was the only way you cook crab. We would boil it the way you normally boil crab, with crabs with Old Bay and water, and sometimes they would throw beer in. There was always that question of whether it was good to do with beer or not. Anyway, so then we would take the crabs when they came out, take the shell off, take out the gills, or the dead man's fingers as they would call it, cook the crab in marinara sauce, and then we would take the marinara sauce and put it over linguine, and then we would pick through the crab after it came out of the sauce. And then if there were clams, they were just simply steamed with a lot of garlic and parsley and olive oil and wine. And if there were fish, it was usually dredged in crumbs and fried. But those feasts were, if we got, a bushel or sometimes 2 bushels of crabs and a bushel or 2 of clams and some fish, we were eating well. So that's kind of, that was my life growing up.
Did you also have is it the Feast of the Seven Fishes at Christmas time?
Absolutely, we did, yeah. My grandparents, we started doing it, we'd go there, and I took it over. I started doing it when I was about 20, I guess. I started doing it. My grandparents got a little older, and I started doing it. And when I moved out of the house, or when I first moved to New York, I started doing it and became a lot more elaborate, just more dishes. Now we do it in our house in Brooklyn. But yeah, we do about 13 or 14 different fish. Why stop at 7?
Yeah. My goodness. Have you ever been to Mermaid Garden in Brooklyn?
No, I know it. I know of it. I haven't been, no.
That's our old friend Bianca. We used to go to dead shows, and my brother used to scuba dive with her all around the world.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, small world.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
The dead show. When was your first dead show? I get to ask some questions.
That was June 21st, 1990, and they played Casey Jones for the first time since 84.
Where was that?
RFK.
RFK. Yeah, I think I was at one of those RFK shows back then. Yeah, I don't remember when my first show was, to tell you the truth. I know when my first Hot Tuna show was. That was right after Zeppelin. It was my second concert, so it was 1977 or 78, the Capitol Theater in New Jersey. In fact, it wasn't a Hot Tuna show. The Hot Tuna broke up for a short time, so it was a solo Yorma show. It was 4 hours acoustic, and it was pretty awesome. I was about 15 or 16.
Yeah, that's how old I was at that first show. I think I was just finishing up freshman year of high school. My brother was allowed to go to dead shows much earlier than I was. And then they realized they were fine and safe, and he was okay. So then they're like, you can go too.
Cool.
Yeah. So growing up, you moved to New York. Was that for culinary experience?
No, I moved. I started working right out of high school. Even before high school, I was cooking. I was doing some shorter order work at a swim club. I had a job at Burger King. In fact, I already had the job at the swim club doing short order cook, so I showed up. They built a new Burger King in town, and I was like, I'm the only kid here with experience. Like, I'm getting this job. But, then I started working around. My first job was in a seafood restaurant called Evelyn's Seafood Restaurant, and that was in Elizabeth. Started working in a prep kitchen, and eventually got up to the line, worked in the bakery for a while. I pretty much did every job in the place. I worked there for about a year and a half. And then from there, I went to a red sauce Italian place called Chestnut Tavern. It was in Union, New Jersey. It was a really, really busy place. Food was okay. We were doing red sauce Italian food. It was pretty good. But I learned how to butcher there. We would get 6 legs of veal a week. And so I learned how to butcher legs of veal. So that was a really good experience. And then from there, I ended up working at a pretty good new American restaurant. Well, I went to a place called before 40 Main Street, the Old Mansion, run by these 2 recent culinary grads. And at that point, I was hanging in there with them pretty well, and so got some experience there. And then I took a job at what was called a new American cuisine restaurant called 40 Main Street in Millburn, New Jersey, and that was really cool because we were doing new menus every day. So we would get together, chef, sous chef, myself, and just kind of brainstorm the menu and write a new menu every day. So that was really great. And then from there, I ended up doing a stint in a hotel. And then my first job in New York was at a restaurant called the Quilted Giraffe. So I was about 22, 23, I guess, about 22. And did really well there. But then the owner of 40 Main Street gave me a call out of the blue and said, the chef's leaving, and do you want to come and take over the kitchen? And so I had a buddy of mine that we were kind of kicking around the idea of doing a restaurant together. And he was the sous chef at 40 Main Street when I was first there. So he and I went back together as co-chefs. And that worked out really well. We, got some, good reviews, and but that kind of was short-lived. And then I ended up back in New York working at Gotham, and then did some time in France, and then came back and worked for Thomas Keller at Raquel. I was his sous chef. He just celebrated his 25th anniversary at French Laundry. This had to be 35 years ago.
Wow. So when we were supposed to have gotten together in Manhattan a couple of weeks ago, this is when my wife, she was going to sit in on the podcast. This is when her questions were going to start. She's the restaurant foodie in the family. So was that when you were introduced to really fresh, modern cuisine and ingredients being in California?
No, this wasn't in California. This was in New York. So we had a restaurant called Raquel. It was on the corner of Clarkson and Carmine. There's actually 4 corners over there. They call it Clarkson, Carmine, 7th Avenue South, and what else? What did that run into? Anyway. So yeah, it was kind of cool. He did it with a partner, was a guy named Serge Raoul, who had Raoul's, who's been there for 50 years now. The food was really great, but it was this crazy scene because Serge wanted this bar scene, and there was a big long bar, and Thomas wanted a serious restaurant on the other side, and the waiters didn't know sort of which way to turn, and we were doing some amazing food. The cool thing about what Thomas did, the way he ran his kitchen, and I don't think too many people really talked about this. There's an intensity that he works, and people know about that, and obviously, the ingredients that he buys are all top notch, and he really drives the staff and gets the most out of people. But one thing that he did that I don't think too many people talk about is how inclusive he was when it came to working through the menu. Every day he would say, there's a bunch of stuff downstairs that just came in. This is what's there. What do you want to do? And we all sat around the stove, and as we were prepping, and just threw out ideas. And I would say, well, I'll take the crab, and I'll take some fluke came in. I'll take that, and we'll do kind of like we'll dredge the fluke in, light breadcrumbs, and I'll make a little sort of ragu with the crab and lots of herbs and butter, and kind of make like a little Napoleon of that. And so he would just say, okay, and then he would say, well, that sounds great, but I want you to add X, Y, and Z, and then maybe somebody else would have a suggestion. And before you knew it, you had a dish. And this happened every single day, with probably 3 or 4 dishes, and then sometimes those dishes we would kind of work through, and sometimes they end up on a menu, and it was just this really, but it was funny because I started to resent it a little bit because, like, I work on a dish and I end up on a menu, and it was like on his menu. And it wasn't until I had my own kitchen where I realized that even though I thought I was coming up with this dish, it was his system, it was his kitchen. He would only allow me to do it because he was kind of guiding the whole process. And it was just really, really just cool time for me to cook because everything was just really wide open. And I mean, I remember the first time where, and looking back on it now, it's kind of passé, but where we were taking beet juice, and it was highly reduced beet juice, and he did this lobster dish with leeks and beets. And one day, just it kind of got splattered on a plate, and he was like, "I kind of like that." And then it became like, lift up the spoon, like 2 feet off the plate and let it splatter. And then it became put the plate on a milk crate and get up on another milk crate and let it splatter from 10 feet and see what happens. So it was just highly experimental. I remember one day having a VIP in, and he's like, "Oh, let's do some foie gras." I was like, "Okay." And I took the entire lobe of foie gras. I was like, "I'm going to roast it whole." And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "It better work." I said, "I think it will." And it did. And it was like, became this cool thing that we did for VIPs. And it ended up on the menu as a whole lobe of foie gras.
I do like foie gras.
So it was this highly experimental, fun time. But that restaurant, it didn't work out. I left about a year into it and decided I wanted to go to France and work a little bit. I came back and eventually took a chef's job at a restaurant called Mondrian, which was my first chef's job in New York.
How long were you an executive? Were you executive chef?
Yeah, I started there as I started there as the sous chef, and then I left. What happened is this was God, how long ago? I was in my 20s. I think I was about 25, and I was planning on going to France to work for 6 months. And the guy one of the chef owner of the restaurant, a guy named Dennis Foy, had called me, and we had met. And someone suggested that he'd bring me in to be the sous chef or to be the chef de cuisine in this new restaurant he was doing in New York. And I didn't want to do it. I knew Dennis. I liked him fine, but I wasn't really interested in being a sous chef. And my dad was diagnosed with cancer. He had lung cancer, stage 4 lung cancer. So at that point, I decided I couldn't travel to France. I had to stay home. And I took the job. And I was there for about 2 months when my father passed away. And I wasn't crazy about the job. I wasn't crazy about what we were doing there. And so when I came back after, I took about a month off and came back to work. I was there for a couple of weeks, and I decided I'm done. I'm going to France. And I was in France. I was working for a chef named Michel Bras. And I was there for about 2-3 months, and I got a phone call from the actual owner of the restaurant saying, can you come back? We're having problems. And so I came back, and I came back as the chef. Dennis left, and so that was my first chef's job in New York. I took it over, and in about 6 months' time, we got a 3-star review from the New York Times, and that kind of put me on the map.
And then from there to Gramercy?
Yeah, I was there. I was a chef there for about 3-4 years. Won Best New Chef Food and Wine magazine and a bunch of other stuff. And it was at Food and Wine in Aspen that I met Danny Meyer. This was 1991. Danny's chef Michael Romano at Union Square Cafe also got Best Chef for Food and Wine magazine that year. They usually nominate 10 chefs a year. And so I met Danny, and we kind of hit it off. And the following year, I went back to Food and Wine Aspen. Danny, come to the restaurant. He'd been in a couple times. A lot of managers from Union Square Cafe had come in, so I knew he liked the restaurant. I liked what he was doing, and so the following year, Food and Wine. So I guess it's June. And I said, listen, when I get back to New York, I want to give you a call. He said, okay. So I called him and said, listen, we're closing Mondrian. And he said, why are you telling me? I said, well, I think you like what I do. I like what you do, and maybe we should talk about doing a restaurant together. And he said, no, I have no desire to do a second restaurant. I was like, okay. And I had a partner. We started looking for a space. And Danny called back and said, you know what, let's explore this. And so what we did is we met a few times and talked. And then we decided to take a trip together. So we took a trip to Italy together. And we spent about 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, we had the idea for Gramercy Tavern sort of sketched out on the back of a napkin. Most of the time, we didn't spend really talking about food or service or anything. We really talked about the kind of business we wanted to run, the kind of what we thought was missing from the sort of restaurant industry and how we can change it. And so, 2 years later, Gramercy opened. So this was about 94.
Every time we'd walk through that area, in the early 2000s, I'd tell my wife, the restaurant is right around here, Gramercy Park. Every time we walked through, I'd mention it. Yeah.
So actually, I'm going back on Sunday. Gramercy is celebrating its 25th anniversary as well.
Congrats.
And there's a party Sunday night only for current and past employees. It's probably about 400 people. So I'm going, and my wife and I are going. I met my wife there. So we're going together, and it should be fun.
She's been supportive of the whole culinary career and all the busyness that comes with the restaurant group.
Yeah. She. I mean, listen. Before I had young children, I have a 26-year-old, and from a different mom.
Is he the one you referred to as the mixologist on the last season of Top Chef with the sigh and the eye roll? Yes. No. It wasn't. I think the eye roll. See, they actually cut eye rolls in sometimes. No, I love it. Well, he's back from school now, and he's actually going to school for food policy, and he's tending bar and enjoys it, and I'm pretty cool with it. I think the eye roll was word mixologist. I don't think it was aimed at my son. I think it was aimed at the word mixologist. Right.
But anyway, So no, so with little guys now, I mean, I'm much further along in my career, and I'm not spending, I'm not in my restaurants until 1 o'clock at night. Usually 7, 8 o'clock, I'm done. I'm home. So it's not the crazy schedule it used to be. When I'm away shooting, I'm gone for five weeks at a time. That's once a year. So, but no, I don't work I don't do the 80 hours a week like I used to. I'm too old for that. I can't do it anymore.
That's more time for fishing
Yeah.
now.
Well, I wish I had more time for fishing. I'm trying. I was going to go out today, but I'm on this podcast, so I'm not.
Right.
I'm not on the boat. I was going to do it on the boat, but then I decided.
Yeah.
You know what I did? I was actually going to go fishing this morning, and I took out some of my rods and started looking at them, and I noticed they were getting beat up. So I spent the last 2 hours cleaning my tackle.
Yeah, I've got some corks that need a good scrubbing right now. That are real.
Yeah, that's what I did. I spent a lot of time. I had a pretty good offshore trip last week, so I had finally got around to cleaning stuff up. But yeah, no, I try to get out. I don't fish nearly as much as I used to. I used to get out about 60 days a year. Between winter trips or fall spring trips to the Bahamas and Key West and fishing locally. Mostly for back then was mostly sight fishing for stripers. But lately I started spending more time offshore. There's a great tuna bite happening right now. I think if I get out 30 times a year, that's a lot now. I guess it's still pretty good. But
Yeah, I'm going out today to scout a spot for a group of 6-year-olds for a birthday party.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a little fishing, see if I can just get some itty bitty bluegill that'll make them happy. That's going to be chaos.
So it's lake fishing.
Yeah, there's a little man-made lake near Old Town Alexandria that was just rebuilt. And they'll stock that with trout, and it's got some catfish and carp.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. All right, I have some culinary questions now.
Sure.
Why are salt and pepper the main seasoning ingredients or agents?
Because food on its own is inherently really good, and salt brings out the flavor of everything. It intensifies the flavor of everything. Pepper, I think, just kind of rounds everything out a little bit. So that's it. I mean, you can add all the vinegar, herbs, whatever. But if you don't have salt, it's just going to taste. Everything is going to taste bland.
My parents don't cook with salt anymore. I don't know if it's because they're aging, but we will sneak our own seasonings, and my wife will bring hot sauce to their house.
Yeah, the hot sauce kind of works. The hot sauce has a good amount of salt in it.
What is the deal with cilantro? Why is that so prevalent? Now, I kind of blame Bobby Flay because I'd never seen cilantro until he came on the Food Network in the 90s.
I think there were a lot of Mexican cooks cooking with cilantro for many, many years. No, it's I like it. I use it a lot, especially I'm out in Long Island right now. I have a garden out here, and I cook pretty much every night, and cilantro finds its way into pretty much every raw fish preparation. It also works well with meat. If you're doing like a hanger steak, and I like to use a lot of fresh herbs this time of year, and cilantro always kind of works for me. It was a party across the street, so I brought a big poke from with tuna, and chili and cilantro and garlic and lime juice. Just it's kind of magic together. It all works.
Yeah, I can't do it. Just hearing the word cilantro.
Well, you know why?
Making me.
You know why? No, genetically, some people just can't eat cilantro.
I can't smell it. Yeah, yep. I'm on the Facebook page. I hate cilantro, and they're always ragging on Trader Joe's because everything has cilantro. There.
So when we're done, Google genetics and cilantro and see what comes up.
Yeah.
You'll see that like genetically you are predisposed to not like cilantro.
And we went to a place in Columbus, Ohio last week that has Alton Brown's favorite salsa, and straight up it was all cilantro. And I just sat there and drank margaritas and didn't eat anything.
Yeah, I guess that's that. And you'll never, no matter what you do, you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
One of those things.
What is your favorite source of umami?
Right now, I'm leaning towards more fermented stuff. especially Calabrian chilies, because besides being spicy, it's also fermented. I think that gives a good shot. I mean, I've always been a fan of mushrooms. So doing things like taking portobello mushrooms, if you just roast them in the oven, they'll throw off a lot of liquid. Taking that liquid down and reducing it is another great source of umami. Anchovy paste, I think, is also a really great source. So it's kind of what I'm turning to these days.
Do you have a favorite seasonal ingredient?
Probably morels or ramps.
I've never been able to find
great.
either of them.
Really?
Yeah, I read
morels.
The Landon Cook book. Landon Cook is his name. His book on foraging.
Right.
He said you go find places that have been burnt out and forest fires, and you'll find them all over the place.
Yeah, dead. Usually more out west, but my neighbor found a bunch of morels this year right across the street from me, around a dead tree. So they're there. I mean, ramps. I had a patch I used to dig in New Jersey that I found, but they're around. I think you got to just spend some time in the woods and you'll find them.
My cousin Ari, one of his restaurants, Gibellina, he does a ramp pizza in the spring. That's really good.
Yeah. Ramps become the big spring thing. I remember back when I was at Quilted Giraffe, we were using them, and it was kind of before they were really popular. It's really funny to watch how popular they've become. But I think there's been a problem with the way they're being harvested. If you yank them out of the ground, they won't grow back. You have to cut them out. And so too many people are just harvesting and pulling them out of the ground. And it's becoming a problem because we're killing them off.
And I know people have their secret patches.
Yeah.
Just like the fungus foragers, people have their ramp spots that are top secret. Yep.
The forage farm. I mean, I love the stories of those guys out in the Pacific Northwest where they'll sort of fend people off with shotguns.
Yeah,
it gets real out there. Yeah.
Now, is there a culinary myth that people believe that has been debunked years ago, like adding olive oil to cooking pasta, maybe, or something?
Don't do that. Please don't do that. That's a terrible idea. The reason being is that most people they don't do. There's one thing that you should do with pasta that most people just don't do, and that is whatever sauce you're using, especially if it's like a tomato-based sauce, you have to finish the pasta in that sauce. So you have to save some of that pasta water. You take the pasta out, you drain it, you put it into a pot, you put the sauce on, and you let it cook. It's called, I don't know the Italian word for it, but you stain the pasta. You want the pasta to absorb and finish cooking in that sauce. If you cook the pasta in oil, it puts a coat of oil on the sauce, and the pasta can't absorb that sauce. That's like a really, really bad idea. It won't stick together if you drain it immediately and don't wash the starch off it, but immediately get it into the pot with sauce. See, I think too often in too many Italian red sauce places, they took the pasta, put it on a plate, and just ladled tomato sauce over the top of it, which is also something you really shouldn't do. But then the pasta would stick together because you didn't mix it fast enough. But if you mix it fast enough with the sauce, you don't have that problem. So that's something I would never do. And people still do it. I still have to, every now and then, even in my kitchen, if there's a crowd of people at home and people are cooking, they're like, oh, should I put oil in the water? No, don't ever do that.
What about MSG?
MSG, it's one of those things where it's actually, I grew up eating MSG. It was called Accent. My mother always had it in the house.
The little shaker bottle.
It was like this newfangled thing back in. Yes, exactly. It was a newfangled thing back in the 60s, Accent. And I remember the first Italian restaurant I worked in, they used Accent as well. It actually works. And, it is another source of umami. There's, I don't have it at home, but I should actually start using it because it actually, it does add a flavor that you're not going to get out of salt. And it's a type of salt. But it just adds more of an umami flavor. And I think the headaches that people would say they get, I think that's been debunked as well.
Yeah, we've got it upstairs. I'll use it. I'm making Sikh kebabs tonight on my smoker.
There you go.
So I'll be putting some of that in.
Get the accent out.
Yeah. What's your favorite culinary gadget?
Sharp knife. I'm not big on gadgets.
It's like a fly shop. There's a gadget for everything in a fly shop, just like you find in Williams-Sonoma.
And I don't use them because they're gadgets. You don't need them.
Yeah.
I mean, when I go trout fishing, I go out as late as possible. Like, I want a few flies. Obviously, you need you need a good amount of flies because you don't know what's going to hatch and what stage it's going to be. All that's great. So yes, you need flies, but a couple spools of tippet, some shakily stuff to make the flies buoyant. Maybe a pair of forceps. That's it. What else do you need? I mean, these guys go out and all stuff around their neck and tons of stuff.
Weigh yourself down.
All right, man. Have fun with that.
Yeah. Are you okay with people taking pictures of their food?
Yeah, whatever. If that's what they want to do, just don't complain. It's cold.
Is the changing climate affecting restaurants in what you're able to grow and procure and prices?
Not yet, but I think it's something we're going to have to struggle with. I think the first indication is going to be seafood. I know right now out in Long Island there used to be a pretty robust lobster fishery here. My neighbor used to be a lobster fisherman. Not anymore. There are no more lobsters in the bay, in the Sound. They're all gone. Even now, Maine lobsters are moving out of Maine and moving further up into Canada. Sea bass, black sea bass, that used to be predominantly Virginia, Carolina fish, now tons of it up here. We're seeing more and more white marlin up here. I've heard recent reports of tarpon on the flats in the bay, in Gardner's Bay. So there's some wacky stuff happening. But I think what's going to happen is a lot of fishing communities are all, especially communities like in the Maldives and places like that, they're really low lying. All these fish communities are at sea level. And they're the first communities that are going to disappear. And with that, lifestyle is disappearing. I mean, these are communities that fed themselves through the oceans and through the water and through fishing. And these communities are going to disappear. It's not, the thing is, it's happening over a period of time. It's not going to happen all at once. And so it's like putting the frog in the cold water and turning up the heat. He has no idea. He's like, he falls asleep before he dies. And that's kind of what's happening right now. This is happening very, very slowly, and we don't even realize it. And so, no, it hasn't affected prices yet, but, I suspect on a larger scale it's going to. If you look at the floods in the Midwest this season, where they didn't get crops in the ground, soy wasn't planted, corn wasn't planted. So I think those commodity prices are going to be affected, which is going to sort of force the prices of everything up. But so I don't, we're not seeing it right now, but it's going to happen soon.
Yeah, with the floods, we had on Monday morning 20 or 30-minute storm in D.C. that dropped 3.5 billion gallons of water.
Yeah.
And we're getting another one today.
Yeah. Did you see, we're supposed to get thunderstorms later on tonight. Did you see a storm in Louisiana? 10 inches of rain.
I know they're getting, it might turn into a hurricane and then move up to the Midwest as a tropical depression.
That was a storm. This wasn't.
Oh, that's before.
Associated with the tropical storm.
That's why the levees are at 1 foot to go before they spill over.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're talking mostly, looking at probably a category 1, but it looks like it's going to dump a ton of rain. So yeah, there's this is what I don't think that the average person sort of understands what's going on, especially people who have decided for political reasons to put their head in the sand. It's not where all of a sudden everywhere it's going to be hot, but it's like June was the hottest month on record. Now, if you were in New York, you'd say it wasn't that hot. Europe, it was 114 degrees.
Yeah.
I mean, people just kind of look at where they are and go, weather's fine. It's no big deal. And you go to parts of this world, you can't even go outside anymore. There's parts of Australia where it's 120 degrees. And so this year will be probably recorded as the hottest year ever, just like the year before was and the year before that was. And it's happening. And the one thing that I just wish, like, there's some simple solutions to do, and there's some trying to get rid of carbon, using less carbon-based fuel. That's going to take time and effort, and it's going to change the economy, and that's all hard stuff that people don't want to do. But God, if we just decide to go out there and plant a bunch of trees, I read a report recently that said that's one of the biggest things that we could do is just get more trees planted. Because right now we're also, as we're burning more carbon, we're also cutting down more forests, especially in South America for palm oil. And so we can mitigate a lot of this carbon by just planting more trees. We can mitigate a lot of this carbon by planting cover crops, because those cover crops, they sequester carbon in the soil, where, our soil used to hold, 12% carbon. Now it's holding about 4% carbon just because of the way we're farming on a large scale. And so there's a lot of stuff that we can do that are pretty simple that don't include, changing from a fossil-based, fuel to more renewables. That should happen too, but there's other things that we can do that don't threaten that. And, it's not that far away. My children are 8 and 9. Talking 2050 is not that far away. It could be my lifetime, but it's definitely in their lifetime.
Absolutely.
And and what if you think right now we're looking at right now, if you look at the amount of displaced people, it's because of war, some famine right now. What's going to happen when people are displaced on the coasts everywhere? We're going to see migration patterns that are just going to devastate most countries. That we're kind of not even focused on that. Right now, the 6,000 people that come up, to our border, our southern border, and we think that's, a big deal. Hundreds of millions of people are going to be displaced.
Right. How long do you think before New York City is going to be underwater?
Well, New York City, what they'll do is they'll spend a ton of money, and they'll create a system of dikes and levees and stuff around New York City, and think that's going to be a solution that'll last until it's a big storm, floods everything, and then we're in trouble. So, but it's low lying. It's there's going to be problems. It gets the other communities in South America, in the Indian Ocean, Indonesia, that are not going to be able to build dikes and levee systems. They're just going to have to move
everyone inland. Yeah, I tell people, if you want to buy beachfront property now, get something 10 blocks in.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You mentioned palm oil. Are there things that cooks ethically should avoid due to environmental reasons?
Well, I think if we're looking at fish, I think we should make sure that fish are ethically sourced, that we're using fish that are fished sustainably. A good resource for that is the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They have a great website. They can tell you where fish are under pressure. Right now, something like 90% of our stocks are either completely depleted or on the verge of collapsing. 90%. So we just need to, we figure out how to control the oceans in terms of where we're fishing and how we're fishing and what we're fishing for. And at a certain point, we just need to be more responsible. It's not a finite resource, and we're treating it that way.
It seems that the seafood that we eat now is the stuff that 200 years ago nobody would have eaten, and what they were eating was what nobody would have eaten 200 years before that. It's all good stuff was all eaten, and then the next generation gets whatever was considered trash, and then someone figures out, well, we got to eat that because there's nothing left. And now we're running into we're eating stuff that nobody would have eaten hundreds of years ago, and we're depleting all that too.
Yeah, I think 100 years ago they were probably eating tuna and swordfish. It's just that we've gotten, boats that we know how to target them.
Yeah, spotter planes, radar.
Yeah, and boats that can go out for much longer, periods of time. I mean, there are fishing boats that don't come to port. They just stay out there. They drop off fish and they're back out there. And then with that also comes slavery. There's people that are literally slaves on these fishing ships. So this is something where someone needs to take leadership of this. It's one country can't do it. And we import 90% of our seafood. And we probably export a ton of seafood as well. We export it because it's cheaper for somebody else to process it. And then we end up buying it back processed in the form of fish sticks, which is totally ridiculous, but that's kind of what we do. But we need a leadership in a bunch of countries, developed countries that can work with developing countries to sort of put restrictions on how we fish, what we're fishing for, or we're going to completely deplete the oceans. And it's going to happen soon.
I'm currently reading Paul Greenberg, Omega Principle, and he's saying how we're taking all of these super healthy sardines out of Peru by the tons, chopping them up, grinding them down, then making fish food to feed things that are farm raised, which are just gross, non-nutritious farm raised food. And if we just ate the sardines to begin with, we would all be much healthier.
Yeah, this is true. And yet I still think that farming, but not the way we're farming now, could be beneficial because it could be a cheap source of protein. I would prefer to see it happen inland as opposed to in the oceans. And I think that we need to come up with a source other than forage fish to feed them. I'm working with an organization a company called KDC Ag, and we're actually taking grocery waste. So bakery waste, fish, meat, poultry, produce, and digesting it and turning it into pelletized food. It can be used to feed chickens, pigs, and also fish. So that's a way to take a waste stream, keep it out of landfills where it's producing methane, turn it into something that could then in turn feed fish and animals.
I wish they would do that at my daughter's elementary school. The amount of food waste that goes on there, and that's just the second smallest school in the county.
Yeah.
It's like 10 trash cans a day of food waste.
Yeah, well, it can be reclaimed and kept. Listen, it can be turned to compost. If you turn it to compost, at least it's kept out of landfills and turned to methane. But it's something that this company's been working on. It made great progress, but there are alternative methods and there's technologies that can sort of transform that waste into feed and then in turn feed humans. But Paul's right. The idea that we're pillaging the ocean to make fish food from forage fish to feed farm fish is just crazy, and it's happening on a large scale to feed tuna. I was in Australia a couple years back and visited a tuna farm. What they do is they put a purse seine net around a school of young juvenile tuna. They very, very slowly take that net and bring those fish inshore. Then they're put in pens and they're fed sardines and other forage fish until they're 300 pounds, and they kill them, and then they end up on a plate. But it's tons and tons of forage fish that they're feeding these tuna, and I don't see how it's not sustainable.
Right.
So anyway,
what is your favorite fish to catch and eat?
Eat right now. Black sea bass, and we've done a pretty good job with that as well, as far as being a sustainable source of fish. But I think it's the best fish that we have on the East Coast.
Do you do pumpkin spice in the fall? Are you a pumpkin spice guy?
What's that?
You like pumpkin spice Cheerios, pumpkin spice lattes?
No.
Okay.
No. God, no.
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 What is a fine dining restaurant faux pas? What's something that people do in restaurants that really shouldn't be done?
Here, this from a kitchen standpoint, forget about fine dining. We try to time food so the apps go out and 10 minutes after the apps are cleared, your entree's coming down. If you're sitting at your table, the best time to get up and use the restroom is as soon as those appetizers are cleared. If you sit there for 8-9 minutes and then decide to get up, because we don't typically put food down on a table in front of you if you're up at the bed, we'll wait and we'll hold it back because we don't want to sit there and get cold. And so don't wait 10 minutes when you're sitting there to go to the restroom. Go there as soon as your appetizer is cleared so you can get back in time for that dish. That's a pet peeve of mine. It's like, why wait? Why are you waiting so long?
What meal should someone at home be able to cook? Like, everybody should know how to make one thing. Ina Gardner says roast chicken. She makes that for Jeffrey.
Yeah, roast chicken should be one of those things. It's really simple. And I actually think cooking is pretty easy. And the stuff I do at home is very simple. It's not what I do in the restaurant. Although if I'm having a dinner party, it's a simple dish, but then I'm making a bunch of sides. But even then, cook simply. Learn how to cook a few things. But cooking, it's not hard. It never has been. But the only way to get better at it is to cook. It's not some magic thing where you open a cookbook and it's like, oh, this is a great recipe. I'm going to cook this, and that makes you a better cook. No, the only way to be a better cook is to cook. And ultimately, what I would suggest that every home cook aspire to is to cook without recipes. Learn some basics. I mean, the book that really changed my life when I was about 15, my dad brought home a book called La Technique by Jacques Pepin. And Jacques' book, La Technique, stressed that you need to learn techniques and methods to cook, not recipes. And I could equate that to playing music. I play guitar, and I don't know theory well at all. I know a bunch of chords, and I know some scales and stuff, but I don't know music. I could play songs. I can do my recipe, but if I sat in with a band and they said, we're playing a song, it's in G and it's a 1-4-5 and blah blah blah, I know what they mean. It takes me a long time to figure that out. I can't play modes and I can't play, but I'm okay. But it's the same thing as a cook. If you just always rely on that recipe, you're just following a recipe. You're not learning how to cook. Learn how to cook a green vegetable. Learn how to roast something. If you could roast a chicken, you could roast a leg of lamb. Same thing. There's no difference. If you can braise a shoulder of lamb, you can braise a rabbit leg. It's the same thing. And so learn the basics and then make them your own, and then just go shop and or go to a farm stand and buy a few things and go home and cook them. So to me, that's what being, a cook is all about. It's just understanding that there's technique and methods, and you should learn them, and then from there you do your thing.
Right. What would listeners be surprised to hear you eat? Like easy cheese? Do you like frozen bagels, pineapple on pizza?
No to all three. Only because my feeling is if I'm going to eat cheese, I'll eat cheese, good cheese. It doesn't take any more effort to get good cheese than some non-dairy processed crap. Pineapple on pizza is just an atrocity. It should never happen. It's such a bad idea.
What about in Australia? They put pineapple on their burgers.
Yeah, whatever. That's whatever.
They're upside down.
No, I'm not a burger guy. I don't do a lot of burgers. I don't eat a lot of burgers. I'm not a big fan. Surprised at what I eat. I do have a sweet tooth, so hard candy, licorice is my favorite. I just love licorice, salted licorice. Absolutely love it.
The Swedish licorice cars or tires, the salted, yeah.
The Dutch salted licorice, yeah. And the double salt is it's great. The triple salt I can't do. The double salt's awesome.
What is the best town for fishing and eating?
Oh God, Key West, I think. There are good restaurants in Key West, and I've always found the fishing there to be amazing. Whether you're fishing, it's my dog barking in the background. Whether you're fishing for tarpon, permit, bonefish, if you're fishing offshore for sailfish or tuna, I just find it's a great place to fish. There's also amazing guides who fish in Key West, and there are good restaurants in Key West. So that's one of my favorites.
Awesome. And last of the cooking questions before Top Chef, what are you most excited to harvest from your garden this summer?
I'm looking forward to the first ripe tomato. It's not happened yet.
We got 3 Cherokee purples today.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're a little further south.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I always look forward to the first eggplant. That's kind of, then ratatouille starts from there. And we also do this eggplant dish that I started doing a couple of years back that I do it on a griddle, and you slice the eggplant, a lot of olive oil, and you slice rounds. You kind of brown them on both sides, and then when they're brown and start to soften up, I add a bunch of scallions and garlic, Calabrian chili, or if I have chilies in the garden, I'll just slice up jalapenos, add that, and then cilantro, Thai basil, parsley, mint, and let that all cook together. And then I take it off the griddle, put it into a bowl, a little bit of fish sauce, some lime juice, and then all those herbs fresh again, another handful, and kind of toss that all together, and soy sauce, and it's just become like a absolute favorite of the families.
My neighbor just bought a gas griddle, so I think we'll have to do that.
It works. I mean, you can do it in a saute pan, but it just works. Because I make making a lot of it, and so I can pretty much get one batch done on a griddle as opposed to like double batching, in saute pans.
Okay.
So, but it's just great, and you can make it as spicy as you want, and but it's good. You get the funk from the fish sauce. This is, again, I look at that dish is very Asian. It's something I love doing, but the technique is really just it's sautéing, kind of pan roasting. So it's really just technique, and so it wasn't a recipe. It wasn't even. It was just something that one day I said, you know what it was? It was my friend of ours. She was actually a sitter for a while. She's become a good family friend. She loved spicy food and loved eggplant, and so I made it for her, and it just became an absolute favorite. And it was all summer long. This is going back about 6 years ago. It's like at least once a week we're eating it. So I'm waiting for that first eggplant so I can make it.
This is the first year we're growing eggplants, so we'll have to use ours for that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I got about 6 varieties of eggplant growing right now.
Nice.
But yeah, the garden's doing well. We got so much rain early in the year. It set the really the garden's kind of going nuts. But yeah, so I'm looking forward. In fact, I got at least an hour to spend after this podcast.
Okay, I'll be out there pulling weeds today myself.
Yeah, the weed thing's kills you, man.
All right,
it's like never ending.
So Top Chef. And our friend, I'm going to give her a shout out. Her call sign's Thumper, Air Force friend. She said she married a bald man because of you.
Awesome.
She found out I was going to interview you, and she wanted to be here, but they just moved to Texas. But she wanted me to make sure you knew that.
Shout out to Thumper.
Yeah. All right. So how has the evolution of TV and technology, if at all, changed the show, going from SD to HD now, and it's so vibrant and clear what you're seeing?
Yeah, that's like, I'm not a tech guy, and I know the producers, they really geek out over this stuff, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And, so yeah, I think it has changed, but I couldn't tell you how. I know, the one thing that changed the show was Last Chance Kitchen. And that was because of transmedia. That was because they wanted to get more eyeballs to digital, to their digital platform. So that really transformed the show. I think the chefs take more. They can take more risks because they know they have a sort of a safety net they can get back in. And in fact, I think we've had three winners that came through Last Chance Kitchen. So yeah, I think that's changed it quite a bit.
Any reason you started off wearing a blue chef coat in the earlier seasons?
No, the producers, just for some reason, they didn't want me in white. They were like, "Can you wear blue?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And I really didn't want to do it. And finally, I put my foot down. I was like, "I'm not wearing this damn blue chef's coat anymore." But yeah, I don't know.
And so you have no rapport with the chefs other than when they're in the kitchen, correct? So you don't see them. You only see them when they're cooking.
That's correct. I see them when I do my walkthrough. We see them when we eat. We see them at judges' table, and I see them at Last Chance Kitchen. That's it. We have no interaction off camera with them at all.
How do you learn all their names?
There's a question. What we do, it's tough because I'm terrible with names. We get a cheat sheet of photos and names, and just first names, and we study it. And it usually takes about 2 to 3 episodes to get really comfortable. But I'll sit there with the cheat sheet under judge's table and just kind of like, if I want to dress someone, I'll take a look. But we actually have to work at it to get it down. No, the chefs are sequestered. They're not allowed to leave their house unless they're cooking for the show. They're not allowed TV. They're not allowed radio. They're not allowed phones.
That sounds
money.
Great.
Well, nothing. They're not allowed books, magazines, cookbooks, nothing. Partly it forces them to interact with each other. So we have no, and all that stuff that goes on behind the scenes, we have no idea it's happening, nor do we care it's happening.
When Marcel's getting angry at people.
Didn't you see when so-so did X, Y, and Z? It's like, no, I didn't see it. Because why would I? Marcel, that was a different thing. The haircutting incident was different. I remember that for a lot of reasons. Number one, it was my birthday, and I was out that night with a bunch of friends. We were in LA, and I get a phone call. They're like, "Tom, can you get to our offices?" We were shooting in LA, and the production company, they're based in LA. And I was like, "No, we're actually having dinner right now, so can you wait?" So what's going on? And they told me. I was like, oh my God, this is outrageous. Let me finish up dinner and I'll get there. And they showed me footage. And there was a whole, it became a problem because the question was, there was a physical alteration. Someone had to go. Then it became, are there legal, what's going on legally? And it just became a real problem. And in fact, we didn't shoot the following day because we had to straighten it out. And so that was the only time that someone got thrown off the show where the producers actually said someone has to go. That it didn't happen through the process of cooking. But that was the only time. Otherwise, we don't care. It's for us. It works for us because we focus on the food and the food only, and that's it. I know it's frustrating for a lot of viewers, but you could be great. You can win 4 or 5 in a row. If you make the worst dish, you're gone. And we just decided to do that from day one, and that's how we judge it.
Keeps me entertained.
Yeah.
When chefs draw knives, are they sharpened or are they dull?
I don't know. I think they're pretty sharp.
Because I always see them pull them out, and I'm like, oh, someone's going to get cut.
No, they're careful. I think they're pretty careful with how they do it.
Do you notice that some seasons will have a theme where Denver was all pasta, I think it was Boston was all dashis?
It does happen. I have noticed that. We all notice that, yeah. And I think what happens is some will make a dish and we'll praise it, and they think, okay, I'll make that too. And also what happens, and I don't know if the viewers see this as much as we do, halfway through the season, all the food starts to look the same too. They're all collectively working. Also, the presentation starts to look the same, and it just sometimes it gets weird. It's like we'll say things like, "Listen, there's 6 to 7 cameras shooting 16 hours a day. It takes 2 days to shoot an episode. You see 48 minutes of that. So there's a lot of stuff that we say that never makes the cut, and we'll say stuff like, "Guys, this is all starting to look the same." It'll never make the cut, but it's just. See, again, because we're not allowed to talk to the chefs, there are times that I will just drop stuff that at judges' table that I'm trying to push them in a direction. I'm trying to get them to see something. I'm trying to get them to, sort of break out of their comfort zone, whatever. I'm delivering message to them all the time, which I'm allowed to do. I can't tell them what to do, but I can question them. And so we'll do that. And a lot of times they'll never make the cut, but they'll get the message. So I could say, something like, this is all starting to look the same. Are you guys looking at each other? Like, what are you doing? So it's a question, and it'll get them thinking. And so, but again, if it's not germane to a storyline that the producers are trying to put out there, you'll never hear it.
Okay. Do you have a favorite local sourced food for location? Like that, when you were in a certain location, was one thing just more prevalent that you really enjoyed? Pacific Northwest versus Coast?
Yeah. I mean, there was some shellfish and stuff in the Pacific Northwest that was really cool. Macau was great because there was a lot of fermented, wacky stuff that they would find in the markets that I thought they did a great job using. When we were in Singapore, there was a lot of great product.
My wife loves going to Singapore.
Singapore's great.
So all she talks about is spicy crab and the lobster.
No, the chili crab's the best. It's amazing. Chili crab's amazing.
She drinks Negronis and eats chili crab.
That's a good thing. I like that.
Yeah. Have there been any technical accidents, like a microphone or a light fixture falling in a mulligatawny that didn't make it on?
Oh, God. The second season, first season, I think it was, we were shooting in San Francisco, and we were shooting this Dawn of the Dead, what's the holiday? We were in a community center that was all decorated, and it was all kind of Mexican, these paper cutouts, and it was for Cinco de Mayo, and it was just great. And we had this, we're shooting, and it was, I forget exactly, what the challenge was at all, but we were spending we said 3 hours. One of the guys did not have a cartridge in his camera. There was no film, and the camera wasn't film, but it was the digital cartridge wasn't in his camera. We had to reshoot the entire thing. Guy was gone the next day. He just disappeared. That was
wow.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite location that you've been able to fish? I'm assuming Denver, and I know there was an article, I think in Vanity Fair, about, I'm blanking on her name, your other co-judge.
Pardon?
No, Gail Simmons. She's also an angler. I think it was Vanity Fair had an article about Gail Simmons fishing while she was there.
Yeah, I don't know if she's an angler. She did go out fishing. Gail's a lot of things. I don't think she's an angler. I took Gail fishing in Alaska when we were shooting up there. It was actually it's a crazy story. It was me, Emerald, Gail, and Hugh, and we were on a seaplane. We're about to take off, and we were going to go to this island and fish for salmon. And the guy gets the plane started, and he's ready to untie it, and he stops. Shuts down. It's like, what's going on? He goes, the plane just took off in front of us? Yeah. It just flew into the mountain. So there's a lot of fog up there. We're not going up there. It's like, great. So we ended up going to a river and fishing for brook trout. Denver was great. Yeah, I got, I don't trout fish as much as I used to. And so Denver was great because I work 1 day on, 2 days off. So I spent a lot of time trout fishing. So that worked out really nicely. South Carolina, I got out and fished quite a bit. I got some bone fishing in when we were in Mexico shooting finale. Pacific Northwest, I didn't fish, and I really regret that. I didn't get my act together, and that was one of the few locations where I didn't get to come home. So when I was in Denver, I got there and I was like, I didn't know if it was going to be, how runoff was at all. And when I realized it was going to be good, I went out, took a guide out, and I ended up going home, grabbing all my stuff and bringing it back. But Pacific Northwest, once I was there, I didn't come home. And so I didn't get to fish in that location. Yeah.
Additionally, with Denver, I know there's issues baking and cooking in altitude. Did you notice that food didn't taste as good? You couldn't, your sense of taste and smell was off?
No, No, we weren't that high. I mean, we were in Telluride. We were up pretty high, but for the most part, Denver's not that high up. No, I didn't see that.
Can you give us a little story about Padma that we wouldn't know? Something that Bart Vandelay would not have told me when we were having drinks a couple weeks ago?
No, I don't have stories. I mean, she's got the hardest job out of all of us, because she does the quick fires and she does the elimination. So she's actually working a lot, and she's got to get up. If we have to shoot at 11 o'clock, she's got to get up 2 hours before I do, to get hair and makeup done. No, but I mean, she, her and I have a good relationship, and what I'm loving these days is how political she's gotten. She's awesome. Her Twitter game and her Instagram game has just been great. And no, I have no real stories.
I used to watch her on Chef du Jour between classes in college, and Marcus Samuelsson was one of the chefs on there as well.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It was a cooking show around 10 o'clock on the Food Network in the early 90s. And every day it was just a different chef would come in and do a 30-minute episode. And it would be her on maybe a Monday, Marcus Samuelsson on Tuesday. Just other chefs who are now very popular and well-known. But they were just getting sort of started in TV back then. So I've known Padma for years now on TV.
I never saw that show.
She might not want you to at this point, probably. What are characteristics that make a good contestant?
Well, I think when you say contestant, I mean,
Or competitor?
Competitor, I think certain people just like to compete. I mean, obviously you have to have chops. I mean, you have to have experience to get pretty far along on the show. A lot of the younger chefs who don't have the years of experience, they don't get too far. In fact, early, our first season, we had some home cooks on, and that didn't work out really well. And I remember, like, the third season, they said, the Culinary Institute, they gave us their best student, and this guy's going to be great, first one to go. You need, because everything is done in real time. If we say you have an hour to cook, you have an hour to cook. When you're doing some of these big parties that we do, when you have 200 people showing up at a block party, and you're doing it by yourself, that's hard. And the process by which, if we give you a challenge, you have an hour to cook. The process of just making those decisions as to what you're going to make, how you're going to make it, how you're going to present it, that all happens very, very quickly. And if you don't have years and years under your belt, it's not going to come to you that way. You'll struggle with it. And so I think that's it. It's a combination of experience and chops and, thinking quickly, but also wanting to compete. I think those attributes would definitely be helpful.
And don't buy pre-made bread, rolls, and tortillas. That always seems to be a big gamble.
Well, yes and no. There was a lot to do this past season about sending someone home for using
waffle
mix? Yeah, it was a mix. They still made the waffles, but it was a mix. And that was one problem with the dish. Now, if you use a mix, for instance, Eric, his fufu was a mix. But it was damn good. The mix itself, the fufu itself wasn't the thing. His stew that he made with the fufu was dynamite. It was delicious. It was great. So it never became an issue. But the chicken wasn't that good with the waffle. So now the waffle mix became a problem too. But she didn't go home. There was a worse dish. And so it's a factor. But it's not like a rule that if you use a box mix, you're going home. There's no rules. We don't have rules like that. If we had a rule like that, they would know. In fact, the one thing, and you don't see it as much anymore, but the chefs used to, get the judges' table and they would say, "Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't understand the challenge." That's a lot of nonsense. I'll tell you why. The one thing that we do is we give the challenge to the chefs, and Palmer says your time starts now, and they run, right? We stop them. We let them kind of run, get to a certain point. We tell them to stop. Camera stop. We get them all together, and the producers sit with them and go through the actual challenge, not what Padma tells them, but the actual challenge. What it is, what you can use, what you can't use, and they go through it, and they all have to sign if they understood it. And then we get them together and say, go. This happens, it takes about 10 minutes. But they understand the challenge. If for some reason they weren't allowed to use a box mix, they would be told you can't use a mix. And so we can't ding them for something that they were able to do. So here's the dilemma. Let's just say they had to make cakes. I'll just use that as an example. We would never do a challenge where we say make a cake. That's not that interesting. But let's just say they had to make cakes. Let's just say there are two teams, and they had to make a dinner, and part of that was to make a cake. And one team used a box mix, and the other team made it from scratch. And let's just say the box mix was good, but it was still a box mix. And let's just say the one that did it from scratch was horrible. That's a dilemma. Most likely the box mix would win because it was good, even though it was a box mix. And most likely that chef would probably say, oh, I doctored that box mix up. I did X, Y, and Z. But if someone made it from scratch and it was god-awful, why would that win? The food that's better is going to win. And so unless they were told you cannot use a box, and they did, I would say that's not a dumb thing. So there's no rules. There's no rules around what we do and what we don't do. I remember Kwame went home. He used Legos. That was a pretty bad move. I mean, that was terrible. Also, they were dried out the way he kept them and held them. So no, again, it all comes down to, and it is subjective. It all comes down to what we think is the best dish, what we think is the worst dish. That's it.
Do you have a scoring card to help you decide all this?
No.
Like under the table?
No. There's no scoring card. No. We eat the food. We all have a pretty good memory for the food that is in front of us at the time. We're eating it. We don't make notes. We don't take notes. The producers take notes. So if ever we say, oh, God, was there something in that dish that I'm forgetting something? And they'll say, oh, yeah, here's the dish. And so there's always a reference there. But no, we don't take notes. There's no scoring system. There was one time that we judges, again, not the producers, but the judges decided to maybe try to come up with a scoring system because we couldn't choose a winner. And this was in the finale. And we devised one. We didn't necessarily use it, but we still devised it just to see if we could figure out a different way to come up with an outcome. That was the season that Nick Elmy won, and he beat out Nina, which was really controversial. But it was controversial because Nick yelled at a waiter in the kitchen. It's like I care. I mean, yes, I care that he's yelling at a waiter in the kitchen, but I can't factor that into the outcome of the finale. It's only based on food. It's not based on whether or not he yelled at someone in the kitchen. And so it's like, didn't you see that? Well, number one, I didn't see it. But number two, it wouldn't have mattered. And so anyway, no, we don't use a scoring system. What we do is we sit there and discuss it. Often we all come to and we try not to discuss it off camera because we feel if we have a conversation off camera, when we get on camera, it's going to feel a little dead. And so we decide that we're going to go there, and I know who I think should win, who should lose. I think I know who's kind of the second. Sometimes it might be really close between two people. We just discuss it. We talk it out, and we try to come to a consensus. There are a lot of times we'll go there, and all four of us will go, this one's going, this one's going, but it'd be pretty boring if we all just said, this one's going home, and the conversation. Sometimes we know. And there's almost nothing that the contestant can tell us that will change our minds. Unless in challenges something happened that we don't know because we're not watching them, and they bring it up. If we can, the team challenges are difficult because we try to figure out like which is the weakest part of it and who's responsible for it. And getting that responsibility thing down sometimes is difficult. But often we it's unanimous. We can wrap this up in 2 minutes, but that would make for a boring show. So we got to talk it out.
Do you believe there's ever been intentional sabotage? There was like a turning down a burner, a pea puree.
Yeah, the pea puree was nothing. The pea puree, I've said this before. That was a storyline that should have never been followed because it was never resolved. And I don't believe you should actually start a storyline if it wasn't resolved. And I think that the long and short of it was, both people made purees. One person left behind in the kitchen.
Right.
No one stole that pea puree. He made it.
What about chicken oysters? Mike Isabella may have taken it from Richard.
I don't know. I have no idea. No idea. Again, it's like that's not what we judge on.
And I like that your show isn't a reality show based on drama and cliffhangers and like a lot of the vapid TV shows that are out there. That it's not like a pea puree was stolen. We don't
fabricate the drama. The drama happens naturally. It happens because people are working their asses off and they're giving it their all and they're sweating over everything they do. And you see the decision, you see the process. That's what makes it interesting, not whether or not someone stole pea puree. The poor guy, his entire cooking career, he's known as the guy who stole the pea puree and who didn't steal pea puree.
Do you still keep in touch with some of the chefs?
No, not really. I mean, occasionally I'll see some of the chefs. Harold from season 1, and I keep in touch with him only because we fish together sometimes. But no, I don't. I mean, I'll see them at events and sort of out there if you're doing a festival or something. But other than that, no.
Have there been any guest judges that you've been starstruck to meet?
No, because I think I met them all before. I mean, people like non-chefs like Natalie Portman and Charlize Theron I knew before the show. They were fans, and I met them both in LA at events. But I'm trying to think. I don't. No, not really starstruck. No.
Okay.
No.
Let's get to some fishing now. I think that's enough Top Chef questions. Anything I didn't ask? Are there FAQs you always get? Did I?
Yeah, I think you covered it.
All right. So why fly fishing?
Oh, okay. So I started fishing, again when I was about 5, and then for a little bit I didn't fish much. It was a couple of years I didn't fish, and then I started trout fishing, spinning rod, and I had some friends who I knew who were also fishing, and they were fishing fly rods, and we would go together. And then my partner in my restaurants, a guy named Bob Scott, was a big fly fisherman, travels the world fishing. And I was at his house, and I said, you fly fish? Yeah. So why don't you show me how to do that? And so we cast it on this lawn, and I went out, bought a fly rod, and that was it. I was hooked. And I became a fly fishing snob. That's all I would do. I wouldn't touch a spinning reel or troll or anything like that. And I fished trout predominantly until I took my first bonefish trip, and then I was absolutely hooked.
Saltwater is it for you? That's your thing.
Well, I grew up in saltwater. It's my thing. And once I caught my first bonefish, that was it. Then it was just bonefish, and then tarpon and permit. It's like a whole nother thing.
Are permit really as awful as a chase as everyone says?
They're hard. But if you want to catch permit, you have to fish for permit. Go with a good guide, be able to cast, be able to deal with winds and stuff like that, and you'll catch a permit. But you can't fish for bonefish and a permit happens to swim by and you go, oh, let me get that. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to be in water where you find permit. You need shots. And, if you're fishing Key West in July, you're going to get, 15, 20 shots a day. And if you hook one fish, that's good. You know what they say, the only way you catch two is you got to catch one first. and so yeah, it's maddening. It's crazy because this, the thing with permit, they're so spooky once they're on the flat. And yet the only way to get them to eat that crab is to get that crab so close to them that it scares them, but they think it's a crab. If they actually tip up on it and they start following it, they'll never eat it. But if you get it right on their nose, they just think that they happen to swim by a crab that's diving to the bottom, and they just react. And that's when you usually hook them. But they're tough. They're really tough.
How often do you
tarpon?
Go on. So tarpon,
a big tarpon will teach you how to fight a fish. I remember the first one I caught. I fished with a guy named Simon Becker, who was as good as they get in Key West. And the first tarpon, it was probably about 80 pounds, and it took me forever to land this fish. So we're done, land the fish, high fives around, and he goes to me, all right. And he said, how much pressure do you think you're ever putting on that fish? And I'm like, I'm fishing with 16-pound tippet. I don't know, 14 pounds? He said, not even close. He said, maybe 4 pounds. I was like, come on, no way. He said, yeah, let me show you. So cuts the fly off the fly line, puts it on a scale. He said, pull back. And I started pulling. And he goes, okay, 4 pounds. And as my rod starts to go up, he goes, now 3 pounds, now 2 pounds. I'm like, wait, I'm pulling higher. Why am I decreasing pressure? He said, exactly. He said, once you get past 45 degrees, he said, now the rod is loading further up the rod, so it's actually bending and it's taking the pressure off. That's how the rod works. You got to only lift it to 45 degrees and get that fight towards the butt of the rod. So, once you do that, he said, you'll whip this fish in 15 minutes. And so then he showed me, he said, now do that. And he started pulling on it, and I got it to 6 pounds, 7 pounds, which is about all you're really going to do with a fly rod unless you're fishing, 14 weight or something. And next fish, 10 minutes in the boat. And
that's what a good guide is for, is to explain those things.
That's what a good guide is for. Yeah. It's not just to catch. I mean, he's a good guy because he catches fish. He's also, he's one of these guys, knows the tide, knows the time of day, and has a game plan before he gets in the boat. He's not kind of wandering out like I do, looking for fish. He knows this is the tide, this is where I'm going, this is where the fish will be. If I'm fishing tarpon, okay? Then, when the tide, a little later in the tide, this is where I have to be. When the tide turns, this is where I have to be. He's got that all planned out before he gets in the boat. That's a good guide.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is your home fly shop?
Urban Angler. John Fisher over there does a great job. And
go see Dennis on the weekends.
It's in New York City. Yeah.
Dennis likes to eat too.
They all like to eat over there. But yeah, I've been going there for 30 plus years.
Wow. Do you have any bucket list destinations that have not been knocked off yet either?
Absolutely. The Seychelles.
That's a plane ride.
Yeah, the Seychelles, Giant Trevally. I mean, listen, you go there, you can get bonefish, you get milkfish, you get permit, Giant Trevally. You can cast a fly line off the edge of the flat and catch tuna because it just drops off. That's the bucket list. I mean, that's where, yeah.
You gotta try and have a finale in Dubai so you're closer over?
That would be good. That'd work.
Yeah.
That would work. But that's the bucket list. Yeah, that's going to be. I'm 56 now. 60th birthday. I think that's the plan.
Do you have a favorite species in the salt at home to target? You said like the tuna. You got stripers, blues.
Yeah, I mean, tuna is a crapshoot on fly. What I'd love to get on a fly out here is white marlin. We're seeing more and more of them, but it's like to target that on a fly. I think there's a lot of misses before you catch one. I've caught tuna on a fly. Of course, when false albacore are in, that's a blast. And bonito, big striper on a fly is always fun on the flats. Sight fishing. So no, I mean, I caught striped marlin on a fly. I've never caught a blue marlin on a fly. I caught sailfish on a fly. So a blue marlin would be cool, but I don't know if I'd target them here.
What's your favorite season in New York to fish?
Good question. It's got to be fall.
With all the warm water's real close in with all the fish.
There's that, and also you got false albacore, and the stripers are getting ready to do their thing. Plus, there's still warm water offshore. So yeah, September's usually the best.
Have you ever seen anything just absolutely crazy offshore?
Well, what most people don't know, if you go right now along the beach, there's a ton of Manhattan bunker. There's tons of it, and so there's whales close in. But 30 miles off the coast, you hit some of the wrecks, especially this time of the year when there's a lot of sand eels out there. There are more whales and dolphin than any aquarium. A 30-mile boat ride, and it is just it's amazing. Everywhere you look, there are dolphins, there are whales breaching, and usually we get pilot whales, finbacks, and humpbacks. And watching a humpback, 10 feet from your boat breaching is pretty cool. And that's all here in New York, which is kind of neat.
They're starting to come in close and go up the Hudson now.
Yeah, occasionally you'll get them. They'll kind of get lost and end up in the Hudson. But right now they're a mile off the beach because of all this bunker that's out there.
Yeah, we don't have those
schools.
They're all gone down here. They've been all taken.
Yeah. No, the bunker schools up here because there's fewer striped bass right now. So the bunker schools are just monstrous right now.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yep.
So you also tie flies. Do you ever have comparisons between tying flies and cooking?
Yeah. In a way, what's kind of neat is if you look at the materials like ingredients, and again, once you learn techniques, then you just tie. And when I've tied trout, there's very specific patterns that you tie to match the hatch and stuff like that. But even then, I had to get creative. But tying saltwater flies, it's very easy to get creative. But again, the materials are the ingredients. The techniques are techniques that you learn when you tie, and then you just kind of have fun with it and tie and come up with different things.
If you had a superhero power to make you a better angler, what would you choose?
Oh God, I guess Aquaman would be really cool because you can just dive right in there and just find the fish. You're like built-in sonar. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I guess that would do it.
Do you have any superstitions when it comes to a fishing trip?
Well, the banana on a boat thing, I'm not that superstitious about it. You want to bring a banana on my boat, fine. I really don't care. No, I'm not a superstitious kind of guy. So there's I don't. I know a lot of fishermen are superstitious. I'm not.
As a minimalist angler, what item would freak you out if you left behind when you got to your destination?
Sunglasses.
Do you have a brand preference?
No. I mean, I have a lot of Costas. I have some Maui Jims. I have, I used to use Revos. I haven't a pair of those in ages. But, Costas are good. But if I got on my boat and I'm offshore, and also because if I'm going offshore, I'm leaving at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's dark out. If I got out there and didn't have a pair of glasses, that would really suck.
Do you keep spare pairs on the boat?
I usually don't. I guess I should. Yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
Is there a fishing trip that you'd ever want to do over again because it was just awful and you need a redo?
Awful? Yeah. My first bonefish trip. My first trip to Key West, I got down there and it just rained. It stormed for 3 days. I had to turn around and come home. Never got on the boat. So I did it again.
You must have just been hanging out at bars the whole time.
The guide said, listen, it's going to rain like this for the next 3 days. I just got on a plane and came home. I didn't stay there. Because I was by myself and I would have stayed in the bar for 3 days. I was like, I'll go home and stay in a bar for 3 days with friends. Yeah.
Has getting older affected anything in fishing, and anything you would tell a younger you about getting older?
But it affects the recovery time. If I go offshore, I'm like wiped out the next day, and it just my body hurts. It's the last trip I ran a total of about 100 miles because I started in New Jersey, went out to a wreck called the Princess Wreck. That's about 46 miles offshore. And then from there, I had to end up in Long Island. So from there, I went to another wreck called the Cumbria. That was 30 miles from the Princess, and then another 30 miles to the inlet to get home. So there was a lot of time on the water, and the following day I'm just wrecked for 2 days.
How do you protect yourself from the sun when you're on the boat?
I wear a long sleeve shirt. I wear neck guard and a hat. I don't love sunscreen, but I do use it. But I just try to cover up as best I can.
That's smart.
I usually have a light fishing shirt with a hood too, if I have to put the hood up. But yeah, I just try to keep covered.
Do you have a favorite fly fishing author?
Russell Chatham. I don't know if you know Russ. Russ is an artist. He died a couple years back. But he was a great artist, a landscape artist, but also wrote on fishing and food as well. Jim Harrison. Mm-hmm. Also wrote food and fishing as well. He was also a novelist and just a great American novelist who died a couple years back as well. Yeah, those are my two favorites.
If there was a famous angler from days past that you could have fished with, or if you could go back in time, is there someone you'd want to fish with?
Yeah, even though I hear he was a real bastard, but Hemingway would have been just awesome to go out and fish with. I mean, sort of the early offshore stuff, either that or like Zane Grey, some of that early offshore stuff that he was doing. These guys were real pioneers.
Those were some tough dudes back in the day.
Yeah, but Hemingway, that would have been pretty cool to fish and run around Key West with him.
There's a rumor that he may have fished my great aunt's backyard growing up in Jamaica.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
That's just like a family rumor. Can't really.
Got it. Right.
But yeah, she may have met him once.
Got it.
Also, if you had a time machine to go back in time to fish somewhere where humans hadn't ruined that environment, where would you want to go?
Right where I am. I would have loved to have been fishing sort of this area around Montauk, Long Island, back in the 40s, 30s, and 40s. There were stories of tuna all over the surface and swordfish not that far off the you didn't have to go that far out for this stuff. So yeah, back then I think right here would have been really cool.
That kind of sums up some of my fishing questions. Would you be able to leave us with a story about Anthony Bourdain? That's not too much to ask.
I obviously I knew Anthony, and I didn't know him well. I didn't know him as well as Eric Repair did. And Tony was a little funny because Tony, and I say this with all respect for him, he was a sort of a second-rate chef, and admits this and talks about it. He was a tremendous writer. And later on, after writing, he was, I just think, really understood the human condition and was able to use food to sort of get in there and really talk about and hang out with people and sort of get their stories, and he did it through food. But so early on, Tony was always a little, in his first book, Kitchen Confidential, after he talks about, that opening scene was amazing, and when he was working up in Provincetown and the wedding, and I think that's what kind of really set the tone. And then later on, he talks about kitchens and how bad they are in New York. And then there were two kitchens he used as examples of good kitchens and good chefs. Scott Bryan, who worked right across the street from me at Gramercy Tavern, and then he's mentioned me at Gramercy Tavern. Now, I hadn't met him prior to this. But when I did meet him, he was always a little funny around chefs I think he really respected, because he had this kind of chip on his shoulder and didn't know how to sort of deal with me. But later on, I got to know him, and there was no stories, because I didn't hang out and get drunk with him, and he's just just hung out and kind of shot the shit and talked about. There was one thing that was interesting, and he when I started working for MSNBC, I was there for 2 years, and I was going to do a show, and when it announced that what I was going to do, and we never actually did the show, but the questions were, what do you think about Anthony Bourdain? And my answer was, it's really great that he did what he's doing, because that's the only reason I'm able to do this show. And at the time, this was before No Reservations, which was the second show, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so it was before he was doing a lot of the political stuff that he was doing, the geopolitical stuff that he started to do, and one of these journalists asked me, like, what's going to be different about your show? And I said, well, I'm going to focus more on geopolitics and blah blah blah. And the guy and I forget who wrote, but he wrote it up as kind of a dig. And Anthony sent me looking through Twitter of this GIF of Fredo from the Godfather. It's like when he kissed him, he said, "I love you like a brother," meaning like I betrayed him. And I got him on the phone. I said, "Anthony, come on." I said, "This is ridiculous." I said, number one, this was taken out of context, not what I said. And I said, "Here, I'm going to send you what another journalist said." And I actually praised Anthony, saying, "This is the reason I was able to do it, because of what he's done." And he got back to me. He said, "No problem." He said, "We're all really tense around here right now because we're getting on a plane to go to Iran." and that's our next show. So we're all kind of freaking out, but no problem. So, he was, Anthony was Anthony. And
he was a true cultural icon.
Yeah, he was, and but again, I knew him as a guy who banged around a bunch of kitchens in New York and was kind of out there. But what Anthony was, he was smart as hell, and this is why he was able to do what he did. He was just really well versed in a lot of different things. He was a good guy. I was in France on the anniversary, and I know there was a lot of videos and stuff going on. I didn't partake. I
Anthony Bourdain Day.
Yeah, I didn't do anything. I kind of remember him the way I remember him. Again, I was in France. I was like, not feeling it. I'll just kind of do my own thing and kind of keep in my memories the way I was going to keep in my memories. And so, sucks.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking time out from especially fishing in your busy life. We appreciate all of the TV work and the humanitarian stuff you also do with some of your causes.
Well, thanks.
And my wife slipped me a note that she's excited for Mazadar Bakery opening up, if I pronounce that.
Yeah, Mazadar,
yeah. She's very excited for good bread in DC, which...
Cool. Yeah, that's right. They're opening in DC, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
When have you already shot the latest season?
No, we shoot in September.
Are we allowed to know where?
I don't know if it's out yet. I don't think so. Yeah.
Well, we will be looking forward to it, and I can't wait to see it.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. For more information or to contact Rob, please go to www.robsnowhite.com. This podcast is brought to you by Freestone Productions at freestoneproductions.com.